We want to thank you for joining Harlem Women Strong for our event, our educational event on Rank the Vote. We are so happy to have with us today Nicole Yearwood. In addition to being the founder of educatedvoter.net in 2015, so Nicole has gotten ahead of this game, and so she has been involved in voter education and advocacy for a very long time. She also was the director of government relations for a nonprofit that provided free programs in New York City parks. She raised more than $6 million in capital for that. And she has been an organizer for Rank the Vote New York City since 2018, my apologies. So we're happy to have Nicole here to explain Rank the Vote NYC. She's gonna go over a presentation regarding what ranked choice voting is, and more importantly, how you can advocate and use your vote in the best way possible. And following that, we are gonna have a question and answer period. Throughout the session, if you do have questions, please post them in the chat. Well, I will monitor them. And after the presentation, we will answer your questions. So as they come up, please feel free to post them in the chat. We'll keep track of them and do it. But I'm gonna hand over the dais to Ms. Yearwood, who is going to do her presentation and also answer your questions. So thank you so much for having Nicole. And we also wanna thank all of you for joining us here at Harlem Women Strong for this event. Thanks again for joining us, and thank you to Nicole.
Thank you so much to Harlem Women Strong for hosting this event. I want to say good morning to all of the attendees. I definitely appreciate you spending your Saturday morning with me today to learn more about ranked choice voting, which is the new process we are going to use to elect our local elected officials in New York City. So before I begin sharing the screen, I'm actually going to drop the link in the chat to a mock election. And just so you know, you actually don't have to input your name, your real name, or your real email address. You can type in any series of letters or numbers in the fields and hit submit. And you'll be directed to a mock election of New York City's most influential women, past and present. So I thought that would be befitting for Harlem Women Strong. And you can rank your favorite, your top 5 actually, from your most favorite to your least favorite. And while you do that, and because I'm going to actually refer to the mock election during the presentation, I'm going to begin now, but please take a moment to vote. So you should see on your screen the ranked choice voting presentation, the opening slide. And with that, I will begin. So a quick recap on the upcoming changes to our local elections. So how did we get to ranked choice voting? So in 2009, we had a runoff election for the offices of public advocate and comptroller. A runoff election is basically an election that took place 2 weeks after the primary due to the fact that none of the candidates for a particular citywide office received more than 40% of the vote. That was the threshold to be elected in the primary. You had to receive 40% of the vote. If you did not, 2 weeks later, the top 2 candidates would go into a runoff election. This happened in 2009, and a runoff election is actually like running an entire election over again. It costs roughly $13 million, but the turnout was extremely low for the runoff, and that began the debate over the use of runoff elections in our city. In 2010, then Councilmember Gail Brewer introduced the first ranked choice voting bill in the New York City Council. In 2010 and in 2018, the New York City Charter Revision Commissions discussed the merits of ranked choice voting, but determined that they needed more time to make a decision. In 2019, The New York City Charter Revision, after much discussion and hearings, voted 14-1 to put ranked choice voting before New York City voters on a referendum. So it was actually on the November 2019 general election ballot. It was ballot question 1, and it received almost 75% of yes votes from New York City voters in that election. And it was scheduled to begin in 2021, and now we are here. So why are we here in 2021? So this particular election year, there are a lot of elected officials who are term limited out in our local offices. Approximately 35 of the 51 city council members, our mayor, our comptroller, and 4 out of 5 borough presidents. So of course, with all of these open seats, it has caused a wealth of diverse candidates to step up to the plate and run for these elected offices. In addition, New York City has a robust campaign finance system where contributions from New York City residents are matched 6-1 and 8-1. So of course, under the previous system of voting, you would definitely be concerned about splitting the vote with so many candidates running for each office. For example, in District 9 in Harlem, we have almost 14 candidates, 13 or 14 candidates running for city council. We have 13 candidates running for mayor. So of course, in the case of the city council office, if, before it was just a plurality, people just needed a plurality to be declared the winner. So basically it's whoever got the most votes won. But that will also mean in a race where there are so many candidates running, someone could get elected with about 20% of the vote. But this also means that 80% of people could possibly have voted for someone else. So what's happening? As of right now, starting January 1st of this year, for local primary and special elections for the offices of city council, borough president, public advocate, comptroller, and mayor, these are all ranked choice voting elections, which means New York City voters can rank up to 5 candidates for these offices, including a write-in. Runoff elections are now eliminated, and candidates will need at least 50% plus 1 of the vote, or a majority, to be declared the winner. In New York City, the primary will take place June 22nd. The last day to register to vote is May 28th. Early voting will run from June 12th to June 20th. And the last day to change your address, if you're already registered, is June 2nd. On election day, polls will be open from 6 to 9. And of course, you can also vote absentee, and you can obtain your absentee ballot online at nycabsentee.com. So what is ranked choice voting? So we have a sample ballot on the right of the screen. And as you can see there, you see first choice column through fifth choice column. So we say the first choice candidate is the candidate that you love. But what does that mean if you don't have a friend or relative running for office? You may not love anyone who is running. When we say the candidate you love, we mean that is a candidate that aligns with you on the issues that you care about. This particular candidate that you are putting in that first choice column is your favorite candidate because they share your values. They align with you and have similar policy positions as you on the issues that you care about, whether that's education, homelessness, transportation, the environment, criminal justice, public safety, housing, etc. And this candidate in that first choice column, you may also provide them with a donation, a political contribution to their candidacy. You may also volunteer for their campaign. You may tell friends and family to vote for them. This is your first choice candidate, and you indicate that candidate by marking them in the first choice column. So we see in this sample that candidate C is the first choice candidate. That is the favorite candidate. And you see the oval is completely filled in the first choice column that aligns with row C, candidate C. Then you have your second choice candidate. Now, this is the candidate where for some reason, you may not like them as much as your first, but they probably align with you on all the issues. They are definitely a solid backup candidate should your first choice candidate for any reason be eliminated from the race. And so this person is indicated in the second choice column. And again, we see here the row that corresponds to candidate B. So we see that that second choice candidate is candidate B. Then we have your third and fourth choices. Now, these two candidates, obviously, you don't like them as much as your first two choices. Maybe they only check off a few boxes, but not all of those boxes for you. But you think they would do a good job if elected. You don't agree with them on everything, but they would do a good job. And you agree with them with several things. And so they're marked in that third and fourth choice column, and that's candidate E and D respectively. Then we have the fifth choice. So the narrative says that's the candidate that you can stand. But what do we really mean by that term? This is a candidate where you don't like them as much as the first four. Maybe they don't agree with you or align with you on all the values and the issues. But should something happen to those first four candidates, this fifth candidate could also represent the district well and do a good job. And so here we have a video that also illustrates how ranked choice voting works.
Hi, I'm Mahir, and welcome to my bodega. As you may know, New York City has a new way to vote in special and primary elections. So, how does ranked choice voting work? The next time you vote in a city election, instead of choosing just one candidate, you can rank them all from your first choice to your fifth. Here's how it works. Let's say my bodega is picking its featured snack of the month. So many choices. Which one should I feature? This customer ranks Parker Pretzels as her top favorite. She also ranks her second choice, Mr. Chips, third choice, Chi-Chi Chicharrones, fourth choice, Gladys Gummies, and fifth choice, Poppy Popcorn. Other customers rank their choices as well. If Parker Pretzels is the favorite choice and wins more than 50% of all the first ranked choices, then Parker Pretzels is the winner and is featured as the snack of the month. However, if no snack gets more than 50%, then the least popular snack is eliminated. Sorry, Figgy Bars. The remaining second-ranked choices from customers who chose Figgy Bars are redistributed. So if customers chose chips and chicharrones as second choices, then those two snacks receive additional votes. The new totals are counted and the process repeats until there's a winner of the final two. Congrats, Poppy Popcorn, you're the bodega snack favorite. Back in the real world, before it's time to vote for humans, visit rankthevotenyc.org for more information. Thank you, New York City, for voting and for making these special and primary elections your elections.
So before we go over what our ballot's most likely going to look like, we're going to visit the results of the mock election. So let's refresh. So we have 496 votes cast. This means 249 votes required to win. Remember, I said earlier, a majority is now required to be determined the winner of an election. So we see here, Shirley Chisholm has 181 votes. She's in the lead. Mary J. Blige has 7 votes. She's in last place. So because no one has received a majority of the votes needed in order to be determined the winner, we are now going to go into rounds of counting. Now, what rounds of counting refers to, basically this process is the candidate in last place will be eliminated and their votes will be redistributed. Now, I want to be very clear. The votes are not redistributed randomly. They are not automatically given to the candidate in first place. They're not automatically given to the top 5 candidates. These votes are redistributed based on the choices made by the voters who picked Mary J. Blige as their first choice. So for instance, I could have selected Mary J. Blige in the first choice column, but as my second choice, I could have put Letitia James. So my one vote would go from Mary J. Blige when she's eliminated to my second choice, Letitia James. Someone else could have ranked Mary J. Blige as their first choice, and then their second choice could be Sonia Sotomayor. Their vote would go from Mary J. Blige to Sonia Sotomayor, and so on. So it is literally, these votes will be redistributed based on how the voters selected their second choices on each one of these 7 ballots. And so we can see here, redistribution. Now Bella Abzug is in last place. And for our purposes in New York City, these round by round counts will take place until we get to the top 2 candidates for each election. And just bring your attention to the fact that Marsha P. Johnson and Cardi B both have 22 votes. So they will be eliminated at the same time because they are both in last place, and their votes will be redistributed at the same time as well. And so again, the process continues. And so we see here, Shirley Chisholm is the winner with 275 votes. Ruth Bader Ginsburg is in second place with 204. And we have 16 votes that were exhausted. Now, these 16 votes that are exhausted means that only 16 people out of all the voters in this mock election did not have Ruth Bader Ginsburg or Shirley Chisholm someplace on their ballot. So what is our ballot going to look like now? So all of our ranked choice voting elections are going to be kept together. They will most likely be on the exact same page. Now, I'm mentioning that because we see that only 5 offices are using ranked choice. There are other offices that are not using ranked choice voting system, and they will be separated from those that are using ranked choice. So it's going to be imperative that we read our ballots carefully. If there are multiple sheets, you read both sheets back and front, side by side. Someone said to me yesterday, I looked back and front and inside and out. And that is exactly what we're going to need to make sure that we don't accidentally miss a particular election. So just here, and even in speaking of Harlem, since we're talking about with Harlem Women Strong this morning, in Manhattan, there is a district attorney's primary. That is not ranked choice. You will only be able to select one candidate, and that will not be grouped with the ranked choice voting election. So just something to look out for. So we see here, let's just look at this example for mayor. So let's say my favorite candidate is Emerson Brooks. That's who I want elected as mayor. So I'm going to go in this first choice column. I'm going to go to the row that aligns with Emerson Brooks's name. And I'm going to shade in this oval right here to indicate that Emerson Brooks is my first choice. Let's say Jess Allen is my second choice. I'm going to go to the row where Jess Allen's name is. I'm going to go into that second choice column, and I'm going to shade in the oval there. And you're going to continue with your third choice, fourth choice, and then your fifth choice. So let's talk about counting of the rounds. So the counting of the rounds only kicks in if no candidate receives more than 50% of the first choice votes. So thinking about the mock election, if Shirley Chisholm had obtained the required votes needed in order to win, I believe it was about 249 votes, something like that. If she would have had all of those votes when we counted the first round, we would not have gone to various rounds. It would not have been ranked choice because someone received enough first choice votes to be declared the winner in that first round of counting, because that's what round 1 indicates. Round 1 is a tabulation of all of the first choice votes. The official winner will not be declared until all votes are counted. So this means early election day affidavit, absentee, and military ballots. So it may take about 3 weeks for a winner to be officially declared, because as many of us know, military, absentee ballots, they can be postmarked as late as election day. And the Board of Elections has to give them time to come in. They may need to be cured as well. So they need time for that curing process if there are any issues. And then they can count them officially. And once all of those first choice votes are counted, if no one has received that or reached that more than 50% threshold, they would simply hit a button on the keyboard and the rounds would be tabulated and we would know the winner of the ranked choice voting election. And the round by round vote totals will be released to the general public. So far, we have had 4 elections. We've had 4 special elections since January 1st. 3 of them were ranked choice, and all of the results were posted at Vote.NYC, New York City's Board of Elections official website. So why should people use their rankings? Of course, this is giving you more choices. If you know multiple candidates in the race, you are now able to rank up to 5 of them. It is also giving us more power as voters. Now, what does that mean? That now means that candidates can't just go to the people who may be their base of support, who they're familiar with. They may need to work to get the second choice or be the second choice option for candidates who have, for voters who already have a candidate as their first choice. So now they have to kind of talk to more of us voters to get us to maybe support them as a second choice, a third choice, a fourth choice, a fifth choice, because they want to earn our rankings. And now, even if your favorite candidate does not win, you still have a say in who is ultimately elected in your districts. You can vote your conscience without worrying that you're wasting a vote. So what does that mean? There are times when we think that some candidates are less viable than other candidates. And even though we really like a quote unquote less viable candidate, we may think voting for them is a waste of our vote. Well, now you have the opportunity to rank up to 5 candidates. So you can rank that person you think is less viable, but you really, really like them. And of course, you can rank the others that you think are more viable, so to speak, to actually win the race. And this is something to keep in mind, ranking a second, third, fourth, and fifth choice will never hurt your favorite candidate or your first choice candidate. So here's some frequently asked questions. How many candidates do I rank? So you can rank up to 5 candidates, or you can rank as few of them as you like. Do I have to use all 5 rankings? So the answer to that question is no. You can still go in and vote for one person as you did before. You can rank 2, 3, or 4 candidates, but you only have up to 5, but you don't have to use all 5. But just to remind you, you want to make sure that basically your ballot is working for you. And if you don't rank more than one candidate, and for any reason that candidate is eliminated and you have not ranked anyone else, your vote will be exhausted because your vote will have no place to go once your first choice candidate is eliminated. So if you want your ballot to work for you and stay active in as many rounds as possible, you need to rank as many candidates as you like, but definitely more than one. And just thinking from a mathematical perspective, looking at these races with 8, 9, 10, 12, 13 candidates in them, the likelihood that someone is going to reach that more than 50% mark in the first round is highly unlikely. So a lot of these races are probably going to go a couple of rounds before a winner is determined. And so what I say to people is that you definitely want to stay in the game. And staying in the game means that you have to rank at least a few candidates, if not 5, just so that your ballot stays active in case a candidate is eliminated. Can I rank a candidate more than once? So it actually doesn't help a candidate to rank them multiple times. And part of that is understanding how your vote is actually going to move. So if you kind of, want to say that you're supercharging your ballot and giving, someone one candidate all of your rankings, in essence, what you're doing is giving your vote to someone who may have been eliminated, because the only time your vote moves from one candidate to another is upon elimination. And so again, this is why it doesn't hurt your favorite candidate to have a second, third, fourth, and fifth choice, because your vote will only move from your first choice to your second choice once your first choice has been eliminated because they don't have enough votes to stay in the race. Going back to the mock election, thinking about that example, Mary J. Blige had 7 votes. She had the least number of votes. She was eliminated. And then that is when the vote moved to the other candidate. But if you voted for Shirley Chisholm or Ruth Bader Ginsburg as your first choice, your vote never left Shirley Chisholm or Ruth Bader Ginsburg because they stayed in the race. So your vote will stay with your first choice candidate as long as that candidate stays in the race. So some key things to remember. Ranked choice voting is in effect right now for our local primary and special elections, for the offices of mayor, comptroller, public advocate, borough president, and city council. Voters can rank up to 5, or if they want, they can still vote for one person if they like. You now don't have to worry about wasting your vote. You also don't have to worry about accidentally supporting someone you don't want to support. If you don't like a candidate, simply do not rank them. You also don't have to worry about splitting the vote. If you know and like multiple candidates in the race, you can rank them in order of your preference. And of course, now moving forward, you don't have to worry about someone being elected with less than a majority support of the electorate in that district. So they will be the consensus candidate of the voters. And so here is our contact information, which I will drop in the chat. And with that, I will stop sharing my screen and take any questions you may have. Does anyone have any questions? Let me check the chat. I don't see anything there. You're welcome. So when I don't see any questions, I always say this before I go, because I always want to make sure everyone understands. If you don't have any questions, this means that you can explain ranked choice voting to everyone you know. So everyone on the line can explain ranked choice voting to everyone they know. I just dropped the link in the chat. If you could take a moment to fill out a brief survey about this training. And I'm going to drop my contact information and our website as well.
Looks like there's one question, Nicole.
I see that. So yes, you can still write in a candidate and you would definitely mark them as your first choice. But yes, you can still, there's still a space on the ballot for you to write in a candidate. Anyone else have any questions? And if you'd like to volunteer or would like additional information, we have one-pagers on our website at rankthevote.nyc.org. I will also upload I can put this in the chat as well, the one-pager. This can also be shared with your networks. And if you would like to schedule a presentation for your Block association, community group, house of worship, you can definitely reach me at the email address in the chat.
We also have another question too.
I see that. Can you talk about a case where you have to go to the third choice? Yes, so absolutely. There'll be times when that happens. So you will go to the third choice. Basically, if the first and the second, for any reason, have been eliminated. So if you think about the mock election, for instance, you only have 5 rankings, and there were probably about 9 or 10 choices. So basically, what will happen is if you pick people who did not stay in the race, your vote will go from your first to the second to the third to the fourth to the fifth. And just to kind of pop back into the mock election, we saw that 16 votes were exhausted. So that means that 16 people, they picked 5 people who did not make it to the end. So for instance, they did not have Shirley Chisholm or Ruth Bader Ginsburg on their ballot. So their votes, that's what it means when votes are exhausted, that they made 5 selections that did not make it until the end of the race. So they picked a first, second, third, fourth, and fifth choice that was ultimately eliminated. I hope that answered your question. Thank you. Because that's how it will happen. You know, for Mary J. Blige, the vote went from your first choice. So it's your first choice, Mary J. Blige eliminated, you go to your second choice. Once the second choice is eliminated, then it will go to the third choice and continue that way. Any other questions?
Well, I want to thank Nicole for joining us today for that very informative presentation. And I also want to thank everyone who attended for taking time out of your Saturday morning to be an engaged voter. One of the things that Nicole stressed is in Harlem specifically, we have a lot of people on the ballot. So we strongly suggest that you research your top 5 candidates because there are more than 5 people on the ballot. So because of just sheer numbers and math, the votes are being spread over a large percentage of people, which means that someone who you probably have never heard of before may possibly be one of those top candidates. So please, please, please do your research so that you can go into the booth with your 5 candidates identified based off of people who meet your specific needs.
And I'm actually going to drop the link to a partner, electnyc.org. They actually are putting together information on all the candidates. So you can plug in your address and the candidates that are running in your districts for the various offices will appear and you can find information about them. I did it myself. And I noticed that even if they didn't have a narrative on the candidates, they at least had their website and all of their social media handles that you can easily click on to at least see what their positions are, view their website, and gain a little bit of insight into who the candidates are. In addition to that, NYC Votes, I'm going to post that link as well. Their website is voting.nyc. They create a voter guide for each election with information on the candidates as well. And they'll have an electronic voter guide posted, I believe, at least by the start of June. Oh, thank you so much, Madeline. So yes, so those are 2 sites that you can go to for information on the candidates running. And since while I'm at it, I will also post information where you can view your sample ballot. Your sample ballot is now available at the poll site locator. Let me just grab that link for you. Hold on. I'll drop that in the chat as well, so that you know who's on your ballot before election day. So you have a good idea of the candidates. You'll know who to research as well.
Great. And the other thing is we've been talking about ranked choice voting, but please note that we still have early voting in New York. So for those who, now that things are opening up or who be traveling is not an excuse to not vote anymore, because you can take your ballot and do early voting. And Nicole also posted that on her presentation. We'll have this available on our website. So if you need to watch it or share it with friends or neighbors, we'll have all of that information available, as well as in the coming week, a brief blog post as well. So you will have a wealth of information and resources. In addition to ranked choice voting, you can do early voting as well.
Yes, and that begins June 12th and runs through June 20th. And you can find that information at the poll site locator. It's going to show you where your early voting poll site is, as well as your election day information. Well, while I'm at it, I always like to do a little bit of show and tell. So I have here the mailer that came from the Board of Elections. Let me get rid of this virtual background so you can see it. And so you can see here, this came from the Board of Elections. It has information on ranked choice voting on the front, early voting. So if you receive this in the mail, if this looks familiar, make sure you open it and read it. It has everything you need inside. It tells you election day dates for the primary, as well as for the general election and the early voting dates. This came to all of us in the mail. In addition, you got this handy fast pass. So this has your poll site information and information where you can call and find out more details, where you can go online here and find voting information. It comes in English, Spanish, and simplified Chinese. Numbers that you can call. And this fast pass, you can now use this, so you can break this off. I already have mine from the last election on my keychain. You can put it on your keychain and you can just go in, and now you can just scan this. It has your barcode and voter number on the back. You can scan that and you just sign the book, so that you don't have to worry about them looking you up anymore. They have this new technology now at the poll sites using iPads and etc. So if you got this card, this came in this piece of mail here, in this mailer that arrived at homes in April. How do you know if you're registered? So yes, I can give you that information as well. You can actually check your registration at the poll site, at the poll site, not the poll site locator. There's a voter lookup. Link to that as well. Okay. To put a link to that. Check your voter registration. And it's always a good idea to check your voter registration, just to make sure before the deadline, you can check just to make sure it's up to date, because we did have an incident where people were purged from the voter rolls and they didn't know. And it was also by mistake. It was in error. So let me just put this in here, voter registration. And remember, when you input your information in this voter lookup, it is based on the information you use to register. So I think sometimes they might ask for your zip code, etc. So if you've moved, just remember to use your old information. If you have not updated your address records with the Board of Elections, remember, anytime you're checking this information, you have to use the address that corresponds with what you used when you registered to vote. Because I know sometimes that's happened where people are still registered to vote at their parents' home, but they moved elsewhere. So you have to remember to use that information. And now you can actually view a PDF of your sample ballot, which is handy. So it's going to be what it actually will look like when you arrive at the polls. on election day or what you will receive in the mail via absentee.
If there are no more questions, we're going to end the session now. First of all, again, we want to thank Ms. Yearwood for always being an advocate for voters, for our community, and for providing us a wealth of information. As you can see, it wasn't just a presentation. She is a walking encyclopedia of knowledge. So we appreciate you being of service and sharing that with the community. It means a lot to us. And we also want to thank all of you for attending. If there are no more questions, we're going to end the session now. Thank you again for attending and have a wonderful rest of the day.